Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. Today we're doing a fried rice that I've been doing for quite a while now. It's actually one of the earliest recipes that came out over on the YouTube channel. It's a crispy kimchi fried rice, which means that we're going to be using, obviously, kimchi. But we're also going to be employing a few other things that are some of my favorite things to use in fried rice. Mainly, we're going to be using a bunch of bacon, and also we're going to be making use of a cast iron skillet. So what we're going to do is start off our wok fry or our fried rice in a wok, and then we're going to move it over to a cast iron skillet to finish it off for a sear. And we're going to kind of talk through why you got to do that in a cast iron, because there's some very, very important things that are essential to searing that you can't really do in a wok super well. So we're going to dive into some of that stuff in a bit. But if you're looking for the recipes, those always live over on my YouTube channel. So if you're watching over on Reddit, there's a YouTube channel. It's at the bottom of the screen. And it has all of the recipe videos for almost everything that I cook on stream, except for maybe a handful of Thursday streams. Everything that we cook on stream has a recipe that goes along with it. And generally in those recipe videos, tend to move a little bit slower, and we kind of talk our way through some of the decision making that goes behind some of the recipes that we're cooking, and like why I added certain things, why I didn't add certain things, and stuff like that. And I've also heard that people find it very relaxing and soothing to just watch the YouTube videos. I've heard that lots of people have started binging them. I think you can binge watch like 4 hours of Woo Can Cook recipe videos now, so that's neat. You can do that if you want. I wouldn't recommend it, but yeah, if you want to, you can watch like 4 hours of that stuff. So if you're looking for that stuff, it always lives over on the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/WooCanCook. It's the YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen. That's also where the live stream schedule lives too. So if you're trying to figure out what I'm going to be cooking on live stream next, that all lives over there. Cool. Nate, how's it going? Good evening. Yeah, you're here for the cast iron. Yeah, me too. I love cast iron skillets. It's one of my favorites. This is one of my favorite fried rice recipes because of the cast iron skillet. So the reason that I kind of developed this recipe is because of the tricky nature or some of the problems that you run into. One of the main problems that you run into with wok fried rice, especially, is that when you cook a fried rice, obviously you have to introduce a whole bunch of rice to the wok. And then when you do that, what you will inevitably run into is heat retention problems, which is generally not a problem in restaurants because they're cooking on really, really high heat. But for us mortals who are cooking at home, that's going to be that's going to cause quite a bit of problem, because eventually you're going to start losing heat, and then you're going to be cooking fried rice on low or medium heat. So one of my favorite ways, and it's not the only way of cooking fried rice at home, but one of my favorite ways of working around that problem is putting everything in a cast iron skillet, and it sort of just solves that heat retention problem really easily. Hermina, yeah, happy Tuesday. How's it going? Yeah. So we're going to talk about all of that stuff as we get to it. But starting things off, I'm crushing and mincing. That was 4 cloves of garlic. And next up, I'm fine mincing. This is about a tablespoon or about 1 inch's worth of finely minced ginger. If you don't like fine mincing stuff, I know it seems like it's a lot of work. It's actually not a lot of work. If you don't like fine mincing stuff, or if you don't know how to fine mince stuff, I recommend that you just figure out how to do it. It's not actually that hard, and it will save you quite a bit of work if you rather use a microplane. But if you don't like fine mincing, though, yeah, you can totally get out a microplane and just grate the stuff. It will work too. But I got to tell you that I think I could probably fine mince ginger faster than I can clean a microplane. So whatever that's worth. So I'm starting off. That's our garlic and ginger. Those are going to hit our wok very, very first. And then next up, we're going to move on to, I want to say it's the highlight of the event, but maybe it's not. Maybe it is. I don't know. This is 4 strips of thick cut bacon. So we're very specifically using thick cut bacon here, no thin strips of bacon, none of that stuff, because thick cut bacon, you can even see it on camera too, has all of this fat. So everything that's white, if it's not pink, that's all bacon fat. Bacon fat is really, really delicious. It's where all of the flavor from bacon comes from. Lots of people think that it's from the meat portions, but it actually has nothing to do with that. And if you've ever eaten just dried bacon bits, you can probably attest to that, because bacon bits, they're all right, but they're not as good as the fat. And if you remove the fat from bacon, it doesn't taste like anything. So what we're really after here, we are going to keep and use our bits and pieces of finished bacon, but what we're really after here is all of this fat. So whenever you see me using bacon, you will probably see me using thick cut bacon so that we can get all of this fat out. What we're going to do is we're going to drop this into a cold cast iron skillet and then render out all of this fat into a liquid form. And that's going to go on to be probably the most important part to our sear, because we're going to go on to sear our fried rice in bacon fat, and that's where all of the flavor of bacon and pork and goodness is going to come from. Garlic press, yeah, I used to use a garlic press. It snapped in half, and then I just stopped. I never went and got another one. But I had this really great garlic press. So most people will probably use a garlic press. It looks a little bit like this. It's got one of these things where you put the garlic in here, and then you smash it down, and then the garlic comes out here, and then you get nice crushed garlic that will essentially do the same thing. What I hate about these things is that they are super annoying to clean, because they got all these little holes here, which is really important for crushing the garlic. But whenever you try and get a sponge in here, it's a real pain in the ass. So I freaking hate these things because they're super annoying to try and clean. I used to have another one, which was a much simpler mechanism. It was just the thing that lied flat, and then you just press down and then you rock. It had like a boat shape to it, and then you could rock back and forth, and it just smashed the garlic. And it was really easy to clean too. But what happened, I used it for like 5 or 6 years. Eventually what happened is I snapped it in half because I pushed too hard, which was a real bummer. And I just never got around to replacing it. I think I even found one at one point, but I just never got around to buying another one. But I do own that other garlic press that I just showed you, and I freaking hate it. I hate those things. They're super annoying to clean. They work great, but I also think maybe it wastes a little bit of garlic too, because a lot of garlic doesn't actually come out of the press. But yeah, I do have like maybe a little bit of an irrational hatred of those normal garlic presses, because they're just super annoying to clean. Oh, you have to rinse them right after you press. Well, that actually makes a lot of sense, probably because stuff gets stuck to it. Because garlic is sticky. That actually makes a lot of sense. Maybe I should have done that. Yeah, honestly, yeah, I haven't gone back. I haven't used the garlic press in a while. Mainly because it's just so easy to just chop and crush and mince some garlic. All you got to do is just smack it with the flat of your knife, and then run your knife through it. And then lots of people ask whether or not you need to go through and do the fine mince. I found that you really don't need to, because garlic is so delicate, unless you're doing something really intense that really requires that fine mincing. But in a wok fry, if you just crush and then give a quick chop to it, and once you throw it into that wok, everything's going to fall apart anyway. So it really doesn't matter what the quality of your fine mince is, because it's all going to come apart anyway. Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. I don't know why I didn't think of that. You probably everything is easier to clean as soon as right after you use it. So I don't know why I didn't think of that. All right, so that's our bacon. We are cleaning our cutting board because that was a lot of bacon fat. And then next up, what we're going to do is measure out some kimchi here, which I guess technically is the highlight of the show. This is going to be how much? Half a cup. The recipe I wrote calls for half a cup of kimchi. I think I'm going to add a little bit more than that because I like kimchi. But what's really important today is that our kimchi, the one that we're cooking with, has a lot of brine in it. So you can tell, every time I go kimchi shopping, I always look for kimchi that has a whole bunch of brine at the bottom. And the reason that I do that is because kimchi brine is really tasty to cook with, because it's filled with fermentation. So it's got a whole bunch of vinegar and fishy umami, all that good stuff that the kimchi is cooked in. It's very, very useful to work with. So if you happen to have kimchi and it doesn't have very much brine in it, that's totally fine. It kind of depends on how old the kimchi is, but it also kind of depends on what kind of kimchi or what brand of kimchi you buy. But if you can't get any brine out of your kimchi, that's totally fine. I just say probably just sub it with a little bit of rice vinegar and replace some of that brightness. But kimchi, when it's fermented, it's brined in a whole bunch of really good stuff. So it's got a whole bunch of vinegar, and I think it has some fish sauce, maybe some anchovies going on, something like that. Definitely a whole bunch of fishy qualities about it, all of which work really, really well to throw into a sauce. So what we're going to do is build out our sauce next. So, yeah, I have an irrational hatred for anything that can't be cleaned with a quick rinse. That's pretty accurate. That is super accurate, actually. Oh man, that's too real. Yeah, that's true though. I don't like anything that can't be cleaned pretty easily. Probably because I cook I cook a lot, and I just don't like doing dishes. So if you don't like doing dishes either, I mostly like. If there's anything that I can do to avoid using single-purpose kitchen items, I will do that. So like the only things, usually by the end of anything that I'm cooking, especially when I do like, so every Wednesday I operate a virtual kitchen, and especially on those days because I'm cooking like 30 or 40 meals. On those days, the only thing at the end of that day that there is to clean are just a bunch of like mise en place bowls, so just a whole bunch of bowls that look like this. But the only other thing that's left to clean is probably the wok and then this knife. And then after that, I just like do everything that I possibly can to avoid using another dish so I don't have to clean it. Yeah, cool. So next up is our sauce. So what we're going to do is, so we have a couple of goals with this sauce mixture right now. The main reason that we're assembling it off heat, and I mentioned this with pretty much every stream, is that so we can stop and taste it. So we're not going to just throw stuff into the wok, because if we were to throw it into the wok, we would have a lot of trouble tasting it. So this happens to be a recipe that I cook probably like 30 or 40 times a week now because I cook it for the virtual kitchen. So I actually probably don't even need to stop and taste this recipe anymore. But I still am going to because I can. But I also do this with almost every dish that I do, especially the ones that I don't cook super often, because it gives us lots of opportunity to kind of taste and check on how things are going. Whereas tends to be a problem in wok cooking, is that we want to insert as many of those opportunities as possible, because in wok cooking there are very few of them because it happens so fast. So what we're doing, that's 4 tablespoons of soy sauce and 2 tablespoons of gochujang, followed by a single tablespoon of sesame oil. And then what we're going to do is squeeze out as much kimchi brine as we can. Usually for me that ends up being about a 1/4 cup. I think this is less because I've used quite a bit of it. And that's going to be like where all of our brightness and vinegary qualities are going to come from. If you can't get, I mentioned this earlier too, but if you can't get any kimchi brine out, just sub it with a little bit of rice vinegar and that'll work too. So I'm going to mix this up, and then usually I'm going to add a pinch of kosher salt. And that should be it. Yeah, it's perfect. So that's our sauce, and then I think we're ready to start cooking. So the very last ingredient that we have not yet addressed is our rice. So it looks like this right now. I'm very specifically, you can see my rice cooker behind me, but I very specifically took this out of the rice cooker when it finished, because what we need here is not fresh rice, we actually need stale rice. So I pulled this out of the rice cooker, I think that was around like 3 or 4 o'clock, so 2 or 3 hours ago. 4 hours ago, and I just started drying it out. So usually what works best is if you have leftover rice. So generally when you see me doing a fried rice, you'll probably see it the day after we did a stir fry. So we didn't do that actually yesterday because I didn't save any rice because we made egg rolls. But if you don't happen to have the time or have any leftover rice on you, which is often the case for me because I cook it in such high volumes, is what I like to do is just cook up some fresh rice and then pull it out of the rice cooker and then just leave it out. You could either leave it out, you could pop it in the refrigerator, which works really, really well. I've kind of stopped doing that because what happens is eventually that rice will start heating up the other things in the refrigerator because it's changing the temperature of your refrigerator. So not so great for other things in the refrigerator. But usually what I like doing is if you have enough foresight, pull it out of the rice cooker, cook the rice early, and then pull it out of the rice cooker and let it sit for a couple of hours. But the most important thing, what we don't want to do is use fresh rice. So we don't want the rice that's in the rice cooker right now because that's going to give us a very, very mushy fried rice if we try to use something like that because it has lots of moisture in it. So over on the stove, this is my cast iron skillet, and it is ice cold. This is a very, very cold cast iron skillet. You can see I'm sticking my hand on it like a weirdo. And what we're going to do is drop our bacon into the cast iron skillet and then turn it on. So this is super important to do in a cast iron skillet. You can't really do that. I used to try and pull this off in the wok, but it didn't work so great. It didn't work really great. And the reason that it works so great in a cast iron skillet is because in a cast iron, the cast iron skillet will attenuate its own heat for you because a cast iron skillet heats up very, very slow. So the property of cast iron is that it heats up very, very fast and it also cools down very, very fast. So the same property about cast iron that makes it really, really good for heat retention is also really useful for rendering bacon fat because our cast iron skillet is going to heat up over the course of maybe the next 5 minutes. It will probably take about 5 minutes before it reaches that like sizzling bacon heat temperature, which is going to be about how much time we need in order to render all of our bacon fat solids into bacon fat liquids. So what we're going to do is we're going to render our bacon fat into a liquid form, and then remove those bacon solids, and then cook our sear our fried rice in that liquefied bacon fat. So let's take a look. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So we're gonna let that get going, and then in the meantime, I probably should have started that a little bit earlier. Yes, that's fine. Yeah. Cool. Hello to everyone just tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your first time catching one of these streams, we're here every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST with new recipes every Friday. So if you didn't catch it last Friday, we did fried egg rolls in lumpia. And that we did that on the recipe for that came out on Friday, and then we actually cooked it live on Monday too. So if you ever catch one of these streams on a Monday, we're probably going to be cooking the thing that came out as a recipe the Friday before. So today what we're doing, because it's a Tuesday, is we're cooking up a kimchi fried rice that I like to do in a cast iron skillet, or I like to at least finish it in a cast iron skillet, because it lets us get its really, really crispy seared bottom to it. So some people think that maybe it's burnt rice. I call it seared. I guess the sear is technically a form of burning. I don't know. But it's what creates that really crisp quality to fried rice. And it is one of my favorite workarounds to how to make fried rice on a home range. So if you've ever tried to make fried rice on a home range and come up with like rice porridge, like fried rice porridge, where it's like really, really mushy and soggy, that's because on a home range, we don't have enough heat to really like sear up that fried rice. So there are a couple of ways to work around it. One of my favorite ones is just batch cooking, so you just pull stuff out and then keep cooking. One of my other favorite ones, though, is the process that we're doing right now, is we're going to finish the fried rice in our bacon fat in a cast iron skillet, and that's going to give us this nice crisp quality. So if you're looking for those recipes, they always live over on the YouTube channel. If you're looking for all that stuff, I definitely recommend hopping over there. Lots of fun new recipes coming up every Friday. In addition to that, that's also where the live stream schedule is. So if you're looking for any of that information, it always lives over on the YouTube channel. Cool. So our bacon fat is getting going. As you can see, we've got all of this nice liquefied fat forming at the bottom here. This will probably take another 2 or 3 minutes, maybe a little bit longer than that. What we're going to start seeing as our bacon fat starts to render is more and more fat liquefying at the bottom of our cast iron skillet. So as we start seeing that fat rendering, what we're going to do once we have all of that fat renders, we're going to pull out all of these solids and then use that fat to sear our fried rice. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, cool. So for those just tuning in, this is one of my favorite fried rice recipes because it uses two of my favorite ingredients, which are kimchi and bacon. And it's definitely not either. It's definitely neither traditional Chinese nor is it traditional Korean. It's some weird combination. I don't even think fried rice is technically traditionally Chinese. I think all of those things come from American cuisine. But what we're doing today is we're going to be using a couple of things that come from Chinese wok cooking and then smashing it together with a bunch of things that come from Korean cooking. So if you were keeping track, the two things that are really, really iconic from Korean food are going to be obviously the kimchi, but also we used 2 tablespoons of gochujang, which is going to give us our fried rice this nice bump in like spiciness and heat and umami and a little bit of sweetness. All of those things are going to come from that gochujang. Yeah, cool. So once our bacon is, we're looking for about, we don't want this to be all the way cooked through because we will remember that we want to account for a little bit of carryover cook with our bacon here. So what we're looking for is about like 90% cooked on our bacon. So we want to pull it out before it's done. It's very, very important when you're rendering bacon fat. As you got to pull that stuff out before it finishes, not when it finishes, because if you pull it out when it finishes, it will finish cooking off heat. And then what you're going to end up with is burnt bacon, which is not good. So I'm removing just the solids of my bacon here. And leaving all of that liquid bacon fat behind. And then what we have here is just a whole bunch of liquefied bacon fats. It's going to be really, really useful when we go on to sear our bacon, or to sear our fried rice. And I want to do I'm doing my very best to remove all of these solids. We want to try and make sure none of that sticks around, because what will happen is anything that's still solid and still sitting in that bacon fat is just going to go on to burn. So we want to make sure that we do our very best to make sure that none of that stuff sticks around. Cool. So what we're going to do next is I'm switching over to my wok here, and then we're going to start cooking our fried rice. So what we're going to do is the majority of our cook is going to happen in this wok. So we're going to fry up our fried rice. And at the end of the wok cook, you could pretty much pull it out and eat it. And at that point, it's pretty much just done. But what we're going to do is, instead of just serving it, we're going to pull it off and then put it back into our cast iron skillet and then get a nice seared bottom to it. Cool. How many people do I know that have a cast iron wok and can flip it the way? Oh yeah. I don't know anyone. That would take a lot of arm strength. I used to have a cast iron wok, and I did do some like reasonably good wok tossing, but that it's pretty much impossible, because like a good solid cast iron wok probably weighs like 35 pounds at least. So you're like, the more that you try, you're probably just gonna give yourself tennis elbow. So I would say it's actually really, really important that a wok is very, very light. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to toss anything. Although I have seen some street food vendors, they're usually not Asian ones. I think I've seen like some Indian stuff where they have like, I don't know if it's cast iron, but it seems like some kind of very, very heavy steel. And they don't do any tossing. All of it happens with the spatula. And I think that's just because the thing is super heavy, and like the ones they're using, they're like, 4 feet in diameter. Those things are like crazy huge, and like unnecessarily large for the quantity of food that they're cooking. But I assume the reason that they have it is because they cook every meal in it. So street food cooking, super entertaining to watch. A repeat of the shallot incident, yeah. Yeah, that's true. Sarah, I think what Sarah is referring to is when I made fried shallots and then I forgot to account for carryover cook, and then we had burnt fried shallots, which was sad. Cool. So I'm adding, that's 4 tablespoons of peanut oil here, and then we're going to start things off with our aromatic elements first. So this is my garlic and my ginger going in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to let this go for just long enough until it becomes fragrant. So we want to use our nose at this point. But when you start smelling garlic and ginger, we're generally at a good point where we can start moving on. But super, super important. The reason that we add these things first is because garlic and ginger only has flavor when it is bloomed out for their aromatics. If you don't bloom out those aromatics, it's not really going to taste like much. So it's got to get into that wok while it's empty. Otherwise, you're not going to get any of those aromatic qualities. Okay, next up I'm adding, this is my kimchi. I'm just giving this a quick toss. Obviously, you don't really need to cook kimchi. But I'm giving it a little bit of a toss so it kind of gets mixed in with that garlic. And then I'm adding, this is my rice, but you'll notice that I'm not adding all of the rice at once. We want to add this in portions so that we can break it apart. So if you've ever worked with leftover rice, you'll know that leftover rice has a quality about it where it loves to clump up. And that's kind of what makes it so good, is because it's so stale, so it's going to clump up nicely. But we want to make sure that we're breaking those clumps up when they're getting into the wok. Otherwise, you're going to end up with uncooked rice at the bottom, which is not good. So I'm adding, that's probably like a spoonful at a time, maybe a little bit more. And we're just making sure that we're breaking all of these clumps up. Yeah. Oh yeah, and also friendly reminder, don't leave your metal spatula in the wok because it will get very hot, like mine just did. Oh, how old is this wok? I think I've been cooking on this wok for maybe a little over a year. I think we're coming up on like a year and a half now. But yeah, it's definitely patinaed really nicely. It's one of my favorite qualities about cast iron or carbon steel is that it develops a really nice patina, and then it kind of just gets this really nice non-stick quality to it. The more that you use it. I should open a restaurant. Yeah, I have a virtual restaurant. I just started a virtual restaurant. So if you happen to live in the Bay Area, you can actually order some of this food online now. And that's actually the reason why I stopped streaming on Wednesdays, is because I operate a virtual kitchen now, and you can order the food online now, every Wednesday. Cool. So this is looking good. I'm just making sure that all of these clumps are broken up. And then I'm adding, that's my bacon solids going in. Followed finally by our sauce mixture. The other thing that I just did, you might, some people might have seen it, is that I just turned on the flame under my side burner here. So over on this second burner, you can see it over here, this burner, we have our cast iron skillet. It's going to stay hot. So that's actually really important, as that skillet has to continue to stay hot. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to sear in it because you'll have a cold cast iron skillet. Not good. Yeah, there we go. So that's our sauce mixture going in. I'm generally a big proponent of making sure that we don't dump everything in all at once, like I just did. But I'm actually pretty familiar with this recipe, and I know that it's, I'm generally pretty familiar with the quality and color of our rice here. We got to make sure that we're looking for. But don't do as I do. Do as I say. You know. All right. Cool. So at this point, you could probably just pull this out of the wok, and that's technically fried rice. You could eat it right now, and it would be really, really tasty. It would be fine. But what we're going to do instead is, instead of just serving it right here, what we're going to do, first I'll make sure that it's not burning. And then we're going to move back over to our cast iron skillet where we've got all of this liquefied bacon going on here. And then I'm going to add my fried rice back to this bacon fat so that we can sear it. And then what's going to happen is all of the rice that's making contact with the bottom of the skillet right now is going to develop a nice sear to it. So this is definitely an optional step, but I love doing it because it's going to give us some of the crispiest and tastiest fried rice that you will ever eat. Yeah, cool. Oh, you're ignorant. Patina equals seasoning. Technically, I guess so. I kind of like the concept of seasoning is really obscure, and I see it thrown around a lot, which is technically not seasoning. But I guess so. Yeah, I guess that's essentially what a seasoning is just like the wear of a skillet or the wear of a wok. So what happens with carbon steel is over time it starts wearing, and like the texture, the top texture of that carbon steel is going to start breaking in, and it kind of looks like it's rusting. So you can even see it. You can see it really well on my knives because these knives are really old. They're from like the 70s. Oh, not if the camera's not on. So you can see it in the knives really well. Come on back. There it is. So the general color of this knife is probably supposed to look more like this, where it's like pretty bright, kind of looks like stainless steel. But what's happened over time is that it's sort of darkened up quite a bit, and that's why you get all of this interesting like texture going on. It almost looks like it's rusting, but it's actually not rust, it's just patina. And that, if we're talking about woks, is generally what people are referring to when they're talking about seasoning. So in that respect, yeah, you could probably think of it as seasoning. But actually, I think it's a little bit different when we're talking about like cast iron seasoning, which is actually building up like carbonizing, like actual carbonization that's sticking to that cast iron skillet, which I think is a little bit different. But who knows? I feel like the subreddit for cast iron and also so our wok is like mostly just talking about like voodoo and like magic behind like how to properly season cast iron. Who knows? The real answer is if you're trying to season a wok or you're trying to season a cast iron skillet, just start cooking on it, and it's going to season itself. Cool. That's not quite there yet. Yeah. A recipe. Yeah, Spike. Let me drop that. If you're looking for it, here's the recipe for the fried rice that we're cooking right now. It's up on my YouTube channel, so if you haven't checked the YouTube channel out yet, that always lives over on the YouTube channel. So this was a fried rice recipe that we had done, I think last year, sometime last year. So yeah, if you haven't checked those recipes out yet, definitely hop back over to the YouTube channel when you're done and check out some of those recipes. They're super fun, especially if you're trying to cook the things that we're cooking yourself. That's a good place to go check it out. So I'm giving my rice that's a full 2 minutes on its first sear, and then what I usually like doing is just agitating it, so we're kind of bringing up the parts that we're searing, and then we're going to let it go for another 2 minutes and then kind of get a little bit more sear. Obviously, this is true for anything that you sear if you've ever tried. This is also actually true for things like waffles and pancakes. But the first sear is always going to go better than the second sear. So the first time that you sear the first side of your steak, it's not going to go as well as the second side. And that's just the fact of life. I think it has to do with a lot of like the fact that there's not as much oil searing up on the bottom anymore. But we can still get a little bit more sear. And I love doing this, especially my cast iron skillet, which is 10 inches. So if you had like a 12-inch skillet, you probably wouldn't need to do this. But I am working on a 10-inch skillet, so it's there's a little bit less surface area, and because there's less surface area, there's less sear. So we're trying to maximize the amount of things that are seared. You've been told the wok is incredibly versatile. Yeah, it is. It's definitely super, super versatile, especially if you know how to use it properly. So a lot of people are worried about doing a number of things. So I've been told that you can't slow cook in a wok, which is absolutely false. I've also been told that you can't like do eggs in a wok, which is also absolutely false. It just means that we have to like approach certain things a little bit differently. So. If you see steel or iron, just treat it like a newborn baby and you can't go wrong. Clean them and never leave them wet. Yeah, I actually didn't know that that was a thing that you do with newborn babies, but I guess that makes sense. Never leave a baby wet. That's real. Cool. So I'm keeping a close timer here. We're at about 4 minutes here, so I'm gonna start agitating. Yeah, that's pretty good. Just as I mentioned, not as good as the first fry, but that's all right. All right. So speaking of versatility, I'm removing everything from this skillet. And then what we're going to do, just like we do with our wok, is I'm going to give this a rinse while it's hot, which is especially important with cast iron, because cast iron for sure will start rusting if you don't dry it properly. So remember good cast iron care, and clean that stuff while it's hot, otherwise you're going to run into problems. And then what we're going to do is add just a little bit of oil, and then give it a coat. And this would be the process that most people are probably referring to when you talk about seasoning cast iron, is coating in a little bit of oil to make sure that it doesn't start rusting. Cool. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is we're going to switch back over to our wok and we're going to fry up some eggs, just to prove that this stuff is super versatile. While that's reheating though, let's take a look at our fried rice. Yeah. So here's how our fried rice is looking right now. So if you wanted to, you could probably just stop at this point too. There are a number of different points that you could stop with this dish, and then you can probably see it too. But there's a whole bunch of different parts that are very, very seared. So we got stuff like this, which has this nice dark crisp to it. And that's going to be all of the crispy parts of our fried rice that are going to be really, really important. And it's going to be where all of the texture from our fried rice is going to live. But before we do that, we're going to do one more thing in our wok, and it is the biggest and most iconic thing that comes from Korean cooking that we're doing today, which is finishing it with a fried egg. Very, very iconic. And that's probably something if you've ever paid attention to like Korean street food cooking. It's something that you see those Korean chefs doing all the time. So getting back to our wok, there's one very important fundamental to wok cooking about frying an egg, and that is that we're going to go for a super, super lacy fried egg. So this also works really great in a cast iron skillet too if we wanted to. But we're going to do it in our wok. And what we're going for is, obviously, because we're in a wok, extremely high heat. And I found that this works really well in a round bottom wok because all of our oil is pulling up at the bottom of the wok where that rounded bottom meets. So essentially what's happening is our fried egg is basically deep frying. That's basically what's happening because our egg, almost the entire part of our egg is under the oil at this point. So essentially what's happening is we're deep frying an egg. And that's giving us all of these really nice lacy edges. If we weren't in a wok, if we were trying to do this in a skillet, this would be the point where I would start spooning oil on top. Like so. Guess we could do it here too. I'm actually going to do one more. So I'm going to do one more. We're going to do the exact same thing. So you'll notice I just added a little bit more oil and all of that oil is pulling up at the bottom of our wok, which means that when we drop our egg also to the bottom of the wok, almost the entirety of that egg is going to end up underneath the oil, so we get this nice, basically, essentially a deep fried egg. You're making pork belly while watching? Yeah, I love pork belly. I've always tended towards bacon instead of pork belly, but I'm going to start messing around with pork belly more, because I actually found a really great source for really cheap pork belly, which is going to be super tasty. Rick roll him, yeah. Yeah. That would be funny. Maybe I'll do that on the outro one of these times. Cool. So just like with our first egg, we're letting that go for at really high heat. Fried egg in a wok probably only takes about 10, maybe 30 seconds. The other last thing that I'll mention is that one of the biggest things that people test their wok on is whether or not you can fry an egg. So if you can't fry an egg on your wok, it means that you don't have quite that non-stick surface yet. So that's always a good test if you're not sure. And then the last thing that we're going to do, just like we did with our skillet, is we're going to rinse this wok down and make sure that we get all of that junk off. So I guess just like with a garlic press, clean that wok while it's hot, and none of that stuff is going to stick, which is always super, super tempting not to do, because there's food to eat. It's in front of you. You want to eat it. You want to sit down. You want to eat it. Who cares about the food that's still in the skillet? But very, very important, don't leave any of this stuff behind, because once this wok cools down, you're going to have a lot more trouble trying to get it out of the wok than when it's hot, which is essentially still non-stick. So there's even a little bit of stuff that's stuck behind here, and I'm just rubbing it off with a paper towel, and it's going to come right off. That's it. So last couple of things that we're going to do, because we got some nice simple fried rice here. So I'm going to finish this with a little bit of nori. Nori is a dried seaweed mixed with a couple of other things. If you don't like nori, if you don't like fish, you could also use sesame seed. Would be a nice topper too. Or you could skip it entirely. Did the yolk break again? Maybe on the second one. The second one I actually did over easy. So I don't think it broke. I think I just flipped it, and then it did. It just cooked on the other side. It might be a little overdone, actually. It might actually be closer to like a medium egg. But this one is definitely, this is a sunny side up egg, so it's probably still very loose. Let's see it in the camera zoom. They're pulling really tight for this. Give it a taste. Yeah, one of my favorite fried rices. Just super, super crispy. And like really interesting textures that only can come from searing rice. It's also just like filled with umami and flavor because of all of those things that we put in our sauce. The kimchi brine is really playing nicely. And obviously the gochujang has got this really, really bright quality to it. So yeah, easily one of my favorite fried rices of all time because it's got that nice cast iron skillet sear to it. And yeah, if you've never put a fried egg on top of fried rice, you're missing out. We also like skipped the egg, the scrambled egg that typically would go into a fried rice because it's on top this time. Cool. Can you use a wok on glass top stove? Yeah. Game Genie, lots of people ask me that. I have not done a lot of induction top. I've done a little bit of induction top cooking, and mostly just bad induction top cooking. So I mostly try and avoid cooking on an induction top, to be honest, because it's really hard to cook on a wok. But when I think about it in theory, I have cooked on a cast iron wok in a lot. And what I think about when I think about induction tops is the biggest problems that I have always run into with induction top is have a heat attenuator. So as they heat up, they eventually will turn off once it hits a certain heat temperature, and then turn back on very, very briefly. It will only be for like maybe 5 seconds, maybe 10 seconds, no more than that. And essentially what it's doing is it's turning off the heat coil in order to like regulate how hot that coil is getting. So in most frying, that's going to be generally going to be fine, because most frying pans have heavy bottoms, so that the heavy bottom is going to retain enough heat so that if the fire turns off for 10 seconds, it's not going to change very much temperature. But if you do that in a wok, it will absolutely lose all heat. In 10 seconds off heat with a wok, it will drop by like 50 degrees at least. So that's the biggest problem that we run into. So I think like when I think about like how to work around an induction top, probably the best solution that I can come up with is to do it in a cast iron wok, which will have so much heat retention. Cast iron wok will stay hot because it's made out of cast iron for like 5 minutes off of heat at least, not maybe even more than that. When I use my cast iron skillet, at least that thing will stay hot for a full like 20 or 30 minutes after I pull it off heat. And a cast iron wok is even larger, so it will stay even hotter. So I haven't used a cast iron wok in like 5 years, but I remember that thing would stay hot for a super long time. So that would definitely solve the heat problem. The only thing that you want to pay attention to if you're using a cast iron wok is that it's going to be really heavy. It's going to be like 35 pounds, maybe a little less than that. So be very careful, especially if you're on a glass top. Be very careful with how you use it, and if you try and wok toss, be really careful with that too. You can't slam a wok down on an induction top. So like this that I do, you'll very frequently see me doing that on my gas range. You can't do that on an induction top because it will absolutely shatter the glass of your induction top. So be really, really careful if you try and doing that. I would say if you're using a cast iron wok on an induction top, just don't even try and pick it up. And just do all of that tossing with the spatula. But yeah, let me know if you give it a shot. Let me know how it goes. I'm very curious. Yeah, you missed the live action. Yeah, there'll be a live replay for sure. Cool. It's coming to go. Are we in LA? No, actually, we're in Oakland, so we're up here in the Bay Area. And if you happen to be local in the San Francisco Bay Area, this is actually one that we offer on the virtual kitchen. So if you're looking for that stuff, it all lives over on Chef, so shef.com. And there's a handful of fried rices that are from the Wook and Cook recipe series that we are cooking on that series, or on that virtual kitchen. So that's what's happening Wednesday when I'm not streaming, is I'm cooking stuff for that kitchen. So if you happen to live in the SF Bay Area, you can go and order all of that stuff. It's really tasty. What's the difference between Korean fried rice and Thai fried rice? A whole lot of stuff. There's a whole bunch of different stuff. I honestly don't think there's like one type of fried rice that's like particular to each cuisine. I honestly think most fried rice probably just comes from American food. So like when we talk about like what are the differences, honestly it's just like the things that come from the cuisine. So probably in a lot of Thai fried rice you'll come across more Thai ingredients. So I've definitely come across a lot of tamarind paste in Thai fried rice. I've also seen probably the most iconic one that comes up in Thai fried rice a lot is crab fried rice, which I've only ever seen in Thai restaurants. So I would say that's probably like the big one from Thai food. And I don't know that I've ever actually seen Korean fried rice, like fried rice from Korean restaurants. I think it only explicitly comes from like Asian fusion restaurants, or like Asian fusion like this one. But yeah, definitely I've had a lot of fried rice in Thai restaurants, and you generally will just see more Thai ingredients, so things like tamarind paste, crab, other kinds of fish, stuff like that. It's getting cold, yeah. Cool. Yeah, this is probably the shortest stream that we've done in a while. Oh, favorite restaurant in SF? I haven't eaten food I haven't been to San Francisco in a while. I haven't been to San Francisco in probably a couple months now, actually. Let's see. In San Francisco, so if you watched the Japanese curry recipe, so we did a Japanese white miso curry. It's based that recipe is actually based off of a restaurant in San Francisco, or not a restaurant, but a cafe called Bazaar Cafe. It's in the Richmond. It's got one of my favorite curries in town, and that recipe that I had written is actually based off of Bazaar Cafe, and I can link that. There it is. There it is. So that's actually based off of one of my favorite places for curry in town. So if you happen to be around like the inner Richmond, I think it's on like 20 and Lake, something like that. I think 20 in California, 21 in California, something like that. It's one of my favorite curries in town. I don't think that they offer it every day, but if they do have it, it's probably one of the best curries I've had in town. Yeah, and it's also owned by a couple friends of mine. Cool. Fried rice from Taiwan. Yeah, Taiwan fried rice, or like most like Taiwan street food fried rice, is really simple. So it definitely wouldn't look like this. You definitely wouldn't see like a sauce poured on top. It would be like really, really simple. So things like just like a little bit of rice plus like an egg. You probably wouldn't even see garlic or ginger. It would be like rice, egg, and then maybe like some chives or something. It would be really, really simple, and you might see maybe see a meat element, so like lapchang or something. But actually, even lapchang is not from Taiwan. But yeah, most Taiwanese fried rice is really, really simple, which is honestly is like pretty boring if you ask me. Sometimes you might see like peas or carrots, stuff like that. But honestly, if you ask me, it's pretty boring. Yeah. What do you do when you get oil in your eye? Ooh, yeah. Like hot oil, that's going to be really painful. Yeah, generally, I think if you rinse it out, it'll be okay. I don't know, though, if you got oil in your eye. I don't know. Definitely consult a doctor, for sure. Cool. Oh, turning on. Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so if you haven't yet, definitely check out Bazaar Cafe. It's one of my favorite spots. What else? We've done a couple of hack recipes that have come from San Francisco, but a couple of those restaurants are no longer there. Definitely, like when I was growing up, the thing that I always referred to as Chinatown is not actually Chinatown in San Francisco. It's actually the Richmond district. So when I was growing up, that was where we always went when we went and got like Chinese food. So all of the dim sum restaurants in San Francisco that I'm familiar with are the ones in the Richmond. So going down Geary, there's a good one. It's called, I think it's called Four Brothers, or maybe it's just called Brothers. I forget. I think it's on Geary and like 4th or something. And it's got a green awning. It's one of my favorite dim sum places in town. They're not super friendly to people who don't speak Chinese, but if you can like work your way around the fact that they're probably not going to make eye contact with you and you're going to have to be kind of annoying. It's what we've got some of the best dim sum in San Francisco, I would say, as that brother. One of the big things that you kind of run into. That's kind of also the reason, my main inspiration to why I need to learn how to speak Chinese better. Oh, you just cooked the pork belly and it splashed in your eye. Yeah, definitely blink a lot. That's yeah, I've definitely done many things like that working with not pork belly, with bacon though. That's because it's like it's cooking up a lot of like fat. So like that's probably one of the biggest tricks to working with things like pork belly, but also bacon and anything that's working with a lot of fat, is that as it renders, it's rendering out a lot of oil. So if you're working with, especially if you're working with frozen bacon, for example, what will happen simultaneously is it's going to render out that fat, but it's also going to start melting ice. And as that water from the ice meets the liquefied bacon, it's going to sizzle. So water plus oil equals cold water plus hot oil equals splattering, and that's really, really dangerous. And I have so many oil burns that just comes from introducing water to hot oil. And it's also one of the big reasons why I'm a very big proponent of before you put anything into a wok, make sure that thing is dry. Otherwise, you're going to burn yourself real bad. Yeah, cool. Cool, thanks everyone. I think I got everyone. Let me know if I missed anything. I know that I miss lots of questions all the time, so definitely I missed a lot of stuff yesterday because there were so many people in the chat. But yeah, let me know if I missed any questions. Feel free and repeat yourself too. And I'll be here doing dishes and stuff. We're gonna be back, so we're not here tomorrow, but I think we're doing some kind of noodles on Thursday. I forget what we're cooking on Thursday. But this Friday, we're doing a recipe for a Korean potato dish called gamjadorum, which is a braised sweet potato. It's based off of or inspired by the movie Stowaway, which just came out on Netflix. It has David Kim in it. Kind of like I was kind of theorizing like what kind of space food would you eat with chopsticks. I don't know if anyone has seen that movie. but every time that Daniel Day came, is sticks. Never before because he's eating out of a space bag with chopsticks. So it got me thinking, like, what kind of food do you eat in space with chopsticks? And I came up with a recipe for that. So that's coming out this Friday. What else? Last Friday we did egg rolls. That was inspired by Rush Hour 2, which is got one of my favorite egg roll scenes in town or on film. And then I forget what else is going on. But yeah, new recipes, those will come out over on the YouTube channel every Friday. And then generally, generally every Monday we're going to be cooking through those recipes. So this coming Monday, we'll be cooking up that potato recipe too. Cool. I think that covers everything. Let me know if you have any questions. Oh, last thing I'll ask is that if you haven't checked out the YouTube channel, please do hop over and check that out. We're working our way to 1,000 subs by the end of the month. So if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, please hop over and subscribe. Lots of fun recipes coming up, and a good place to go if you're trying to keep updated with all of the new recipes that are coming up. Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you soon. Bye.
You're as sweet as strawberry wine. You're as warm as a glass of brandy. Darling, I'll stay stoned on your love all the time.
lady said her mama called a grave digger. Gone with the falling leaves. Am I coming out of left field? Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. I've been feeling it since 1966 now. Might have had your fill, I feel it still. Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. Let me kick it like it's 1986 now. Might be over now, I can feel it still. We can fight a war for peace. Give in to that easy living. Goodbye to my hopes and dreams. Stop flipping for my enemies. We could wait until the walls come down. It's time to give a little to the kids in the middle. But oh, until it falls, won't bother me. I'm a rebel just for kicks. Yeah, your lovers and a bitch for my heart to eclipse. Might be over now, I feel it still. Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. Let me kick it like it's 1986 now. Might be over now, I can feel it still. Might have had your fill, I can feel it still.
The club isn't the best place to find a lover, so the bar is where I go. Me and my friends sat at the table doing shots, drinking fast, and then we talk slow. If you come over and start up a conversation with just me, then trust me, I'll give it a chance. Now take my hand, stop, put Ben the Man on the jukebox, and then we start to dance. Now I'm singing like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me, said boy, let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead. I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart is falling too. I'm in love with your body. And last night you were in my room. And now my bed sheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you. One weekend we let the story begin. We're going out on our first date. You and me are thrifty, so go all you can eat. Fill up your bag and I fill up a plate. We talk for hours and hours about the sweet and the sour and how your family is doing okay. We'll even get in a taxi. We'll kiss in the backseat. Tell the driver make the radio play. Now I'm singing like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me, said boy, let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead. I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart is falling too. I'm in love with your body. And last night you were in my room. And now my bed sheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you. Come on, be my baby, come on. 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 Every day discovering something brand new.
Gọi là bản năng, nhưng mà ít có bao giờ được nói và mọi biết đó là đề tài của ta hết. Này, nói cái đó nè, cho nên Bồ Tát là thường được gọi là nội bí hoặc ngoại hiện. Vậy ai có một Bồ Tát đạo là nhân? Ở bên trong đó thì ta giấu cái thực tích của chúng ta càng nhiều chừng nào càng tốt chừng nào. Còn ở bên ngoài đó thì người ta sao mình vậy thôi. Nó mình có chứng tỏ hơn cả. Nhưng mà bên ngoài đó là ta sống bình thường với họ để họ thấy ta cũng bình thường.